Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today on This Needs to Be Said, and I have some information that needs to be shared. Take your pen and paper out because for World Stroke Day, great strides have been made so that more people are able to survive a stroke and to have a life afterwards. One of my clients, Veronica Coney, is a survivor of a stroke, and she was not expected to walk again ever in her life, and she's gotten a passport and she's traveling the world. I'm going to ask her after this interview if she's heard any of what our guest today has said, because she may have been part of what they've been doing, collecting data and improving medicine and making sure that everyone has access to it. So I want to welcome Dr. Stephen Hetts into the conversation with This Needs to Be Said. Hello, how are you, and welcome.
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you and your listeners.
Thank you. Now, there's a campaign called Get Ahead of Stroke. Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Could you tell my audience about that?
Yeah, so it's an initiative to raise awareness for stroke. Stroke is a very serious and common condition in the United States. In fact, about every 40 seconds, someone in the United States has a stroke, and about 140,000 people die from stroke each year.
Wow.
But
Wow.
On the more positive side, we now have really effective treatments for a lot of strokes, and so if people can come into the hospital right away, they can have a very good chance for a good outcome.
So talk about over the past 6 years, because I believe this started back in 2016 with getting the awareness and getting you all together to find solutions. And the word I kept seeing in my research was minimal evasive, if I'm saying that, invasive surgery. I think that I'm saying that correctly. So talk to me more about trying to get our political figures, it's a voting season, right? Getting our political figures to understand what you all are doing and get the importance of it and make sure that they're pushing for the same care for everyone as well.
Yeah, so the acronym I like to remember in terms of stroke so that you and your listeners can take it to heart is BFAST, BEFAST. And the B stands for loss of balance. That's a potential symptom of stroke. E is for eyes, developing a blind spot or blurry vision. F is for face drooping on one side. A is for arm weakness on one side. S is for speech difficulty, garbled speech or inability to speak. And then the T is for time, to call 911 and get brought to the hospital right away so that you can be evaluated, and people like me and my colleagues can treat you if you are having a severe kind of stroke. And as you mentioned, we now have minimally invasive ways. So we make a small incision in the thigh or in the wrist and put a small tube called a catheter up through the blood vessels into the blocked blood vessel in the brain. And in most cases, we can remove that blood clot and restore blood flow. And it's tremendously important to come in as quickly as possible because for every minute that a blood vessel is blocked in the brain, about 2 million brain cells die. And so to come into the Level 1 Comprehensive Stroke Center, where people like me and my colleagues are able to treat the strokes, is really the most important thing. And as you mentioned, it is the political season, and we would love for our legislators to help us in arranging for better national and state-level guidelines to triage potential stroke patients to hospitals as efficiently and quickly as possible so that they have access to these life-saving treatments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this could not come at a better time. World Stroke Day, October 29th, as well as we have a few more days before, everybody who hasn't done early voting still can make a decision about who's going to represent you and what you care about. Do they care about those same things? And we're talking about being medically healthy, being physically healthy, having the kind of coverage if you get into any situation. But today we're talking about strokes. You talked about it when you gave us the acronym, and I want to make sure the viewers understand because a lot of times we don't recognize them, so that's why we have that acronym that you shared, and I hope that we cover that one more time before we finish this interview. But during a stroke, what's happening to the body? Because you talk about getting there in time. So I know that people can survive a stroke, and so it's not automatically they pass away. So what's happening during a stroke? And I guess tell me more about the real significance of the time, because we just really may not understand it.
Yeah, great question. And so in the most common kind of stroke, which is about 800,000 per year in the United States, a blood vessel in the brain becomes blocked with a blood clot. And that blood clot might come from the heart, it might come from another blood vessel. But for every minute that blood vessel is blocked, millions of brain cells die. And so that, prevents you from having a full and complete recovery. And so if you come into the hospital early, we can often get that blood clot out and restore blood flow. And for every minute that is saved in coming into the hospital, you get about 1 week of healthy life afterwards. So that's why it's so tremendously important to come in quickly so we can restore blood flow to the brain.
Absolutely. Tell us that acronym one more time.
Sure. BEFAST. BEFAST. And really the most important thing is to remember, call 911. That's the time factor. Whenever you have any of those stroke symptoms, even if you're not sure about it, just come right in. Some people will say, oh, the symptoms are going away, I want to sleep it off, I don't want to go in. Absolutely not. Please come in right away so that you can be diagnosed and treated. And even if the symptoms go away, that may be what's called a transient ischemic attack, or TIA, and that's sort of a mini stroke or a predictor of future stroke. And we can actually then put you on medicines or do procedures to help prevent the big stroke that may be coming later.
And that's the big push with what you all are doing with Get Ahead of Stroke, to get people ahead of it, to be preventative, to recognize when we have that mini stroke that we want to get ahead of any bigger stroke. So that is what you all are trying to educate us on. And I thank you and your colleagues for this information. Is there any information or a website that my listeners on This Needs to Be Said can follow to keep connected with this information you're sharing?
Yes. I think a really useful website is the getaheadofstroke.org. So all one word, getaheadofstroke.org website. And it'll have lots of useful links for both the diagnosis and treatment of stroke and also prevention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to talk with you. I'm not a doctor. I know you can tell. I'm just a consumer, and I would be someone who needs this information. I am someone who needs this information so I can know the signs in myself and in others. And how else would we know the significance of it? It's a voting season, and I'm going to look at my ballot different after this interview, because I'm going, I did think about affordable housing. I did think about, everyone being able to eat. This covers another basic need of being able to be treated when you need care. So, yes, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for coming right before I got to cast my vote, okay?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate the opportunity, and you be well.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to This Needs to Be Said. I hope you've gained something from what has been shared. Send me your comments and show ideas through the website at tntbsmedia.com. I'd love to hear from you.